Join me in welcoming Nestor Gomez.
I know. Don't touch the mic. I arrived to this country in the mid 80s with my siblings. We came undocumented from Guatemala. And we arrived to uptown Chicago. My mother had a small apartment in uptown Chicago, and we moved in with her. It was a tiny studio apartment that was only supposed to be enough for only one person, but my mother, my siblings, and I stay in that apartment. So when we first arrived to Chicago, we were concerned because we had come from Guatemala, a tropical country, and we were concerned about the wintertime, how we were going to survive the snow, the cold. We didn't know. We had no idea what to expect. What we were not worried about was the summertime, because we had lived in a tropical country. So imagine our surprise when a couple of months later, the summer started and a heat wave hit the city and we couldn't even go to sleep. I remember that my brothers and I, we used to take towels and we used to soak them in cold water and put them one on the bottom and one on top of us. I used to sleep on the sofa and I used to get the sofa all wet, and my brother used to sleep in the tub so he could have a cold tub and be surrounded by cold so we could go to sleep. Now, my mother, because she was the only one that was working and providing for all of us, instead of buying an air conditioner because that's what we needed, she kept saying, no, 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 just use the fan because the air conditioner uses too much electricity. So my brother and I would take turns standing in front of the fan and sometimes standing in front of the freezer so we could cool off a little bit. When my mother came back from work, we used to go shopping with her. But we didn't buy anything. We just used to go to the supermarket so we could use the air conditioner for the supermarket and walk around the supermarket for hours. So it was really hard for us to survive the first summer and the first heat wave. But survive, we did. Not only did we manage to survive, but a couple of years later, I managed to reproduce. I got married, and I had 2 kids. Now, when my daughter was born healthy. She didn't have any issues. She was a really easy baby to take care of. So 11 months later, when my son was born, I figured it's going to be just as easy. No big deal. That wasn't the case. My son was born with asthma, and he went back and forth to the hospital a lot. He was allergic to a lot of things. One of the things that he was also that made him really sick was the heat. When he got really hot, he used to get really sick. And I didn't have an air conditioner in the house because, like my mother, I had been trying to save money by just using a fan or by going to the supermarket with my kids. But because my son kept going to the hospital so often, not only did I have to buy an air conditioner, I also had to buy a car. There was one time when my son got sick in the middle of the night, and my wife and I took the kids and ran to the bus stop, waiting for a bus for half an hour, for an hour, for an hour and a half. I had to go back to the house and bother a neighbor so I could borrow $20 so I could get a taxi and take my son to the hospital. He almost didn't make it. Now, the reason why I didn't have a car wasn't only because most of the time I was broke, but also because I was undocumented. So I didn't want to take the risk of buying a car and driving without insurance and without a driver license, because if you get pulled over, you could be put in jail or you could even be deported. I was born in Guatemala. My wife, back then, she was born in Mexico. My kids were born here. So being sent back to Guatemala meant that either my wife would have to come to to live to Guatemala with me when she was Mexican, or I would have to go to Mexico, which I didn't really want to do that. And either way, my kids would be separated from the country. So for a long time, I didn't take any chances driving without a license. But because my son got so sick, I asked a friend of mine at work if he knew anybody that was selling a car. He had a really beat up car that the only thing that was working on the car properly was the radio. That gives you an idea how beat up the car was. So he sold it to me for $500. I didn't even know how to drive. He taught me how to drive the car on our way back and forth from work. So a couple of weeks later, after I had bought the car, it got hot. Summer started and it got really hot. And my son was getting sick, so I decided I need to buy an air conditioner. And I remember that my friend had mentioned when he sold me the car that he had an old air conditioner. So I called him, I gave him a call, and he's like, yeah, I have one. You could come and get it. You could have it for free. Since I was already driving, I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna take the kids, and I'm gonna take my wife, and instead of just going to the hospital in the car, we're gonna take a ride around the city. I'm gonna go pick up the air conditioner, and then I take them all over the city so I could show them the city. So we did that. I went to my friend's house. He helped me put the air conditioner in the back of the car, and then I drove downtown Chicago. And I remember I was driving and I was like showing my wife, look at this building, this is the Sears Tower, this is that. And my kids were small, they were like 3 years and 2 years old, and they were like, oh, Daddy, this is cool. And I was like really happy, I was so happy showing off the city on my beat up car that I made a left turn and I kept driving. Suddenly I saw a police car with the lights on. I'm like, oh, damn, a police car. So I slowed down a little bit. The police car kept following me. So I moved to the right a little bit so the police car could drive past me. The police car got right next to me, and I just continued driving. Suddenly the police officer screamed, stop the fucking car. I stopped the car immediately. The police officer came over to my side, and he asked me if I hadn't seen the no left turn sign as I was making the left turn. I didn't notice. He asked me for my license, license, my registration, my insurance, which I didn't have any of it. He asked me to get out of the vehicle. And he started to put the handcuffs on me. I remember telling the police officer, not in front of my kids. Please, not in front of my kids. My kids started to cry, and my wife moved to the back seat to talk to them. The police officer started to take me into his patrol car. His partner asked him what was going on, so he explained that I didn't have a driver license. The partner asked how come I was driving without a driver license, and I explained because my kid is sick. I just went to pick up an air conditioner. I borrowed this car from somebody else. I really usually don't drive. The officer didn't believe me, but the partner was like, let's go check the car. So they opened the trunk, and when they saw the air conditioner, the partner or the police officer say, let them go. The police officer refused to let me go, but the partner was like, yes, let them go. I was able to drive away that day. And that day I learned that as an immigrant, it takes time adjusting to this country. It takes time getting used to things. And sometimes it's difficult to survive. But as long as we have people who understand that sometimes our conditions force us to do things that we don't want to do, and as long as those people are able to work with us and understand where we come from, we will be able to survive anything. Thank you.